Let's talk Tanya for the 15th of Tamuz of a leap year. In yesterday's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe said that the accepted compromise in the area of fasting is that there's a certain amount of fasts which the Kabbalists recommend that a person fast for every sin, but a person should do that, if a person sins multiple times, the person should do that amount 3 times. Now, needless to say, if we all took this advice, that would put a very serious dent in the kosher food industry. And probably most of you have noticed that this is not commonly done. Why isn't it commonly done? So we'll begin the conversation today, but it'll take us another 2 days after this to conclude this conversation. The first thing the Alter Rebbe says in today's Tanya is, all this talk about fasting, it only applies to someone who has a very strong constitution, physically is very strong, and this won't in any which way harm the person, cause them to become ill, or make them weaker. This was apparently common in earlier generations, in the times of the Talmud. Today, it's not very common at all. The average person would be negatively impacted by fasting. And the Alter Rebbe says, even in the earlier generations, when people had stronger constitutions, the Talmud tells us that someone who fasts and is unable to do so, when we say unable to do so, we don't mean that this is a person who would be risking their life for this, but it hurts them. Such a person is called a sinner. That's what the Talmud tells us. And especially, the Alter Rebbe says, if someone is a Torah scholar and fasting is going to negatively impact their service of God, certainly this is something that shouldn't even be taken under consideration. So, to summarize, what we're saying over here is fasting is an option only if it doesn't in any which way harm a person's body, or if it doesn't in any which way impede upon or negatively impact a person's service of God. And I think that we can argue and say that's all of us. All of us, if we were to fast, either we would become ill because of that, or at the very least, our service of Hashem, whether it's studying Torah or whatever other service of God that we're engaged in, would be negatively impacted. So what do we do if we can't fast? How do we regain that relationship with Hashem, which we lost through sinning? The Alter Rebbe says today we have option C. Option C is charity, is tzedakah. So where were we? That we started off saying the times of the Beis HaMikdash, that was accomplished through bringing a carbon, through bringing a sacrifice. After the Holy Temple was destroyed, so then it became fasting. Today we can't fast, so we don't have sacrifices, and we don't have the physical strength to fast. So today what do? We give charity. How much charity do we have to give? So the Alter Rebbe points to the Shulchan Aruch, where it actually prescribes a certain amount. It's not a huge amount, but how much money a person has to give in order to redeem a day of fasting. So today, that is what we do. Instead of fasting, today we give charity. Does that mean that there's no more fasting at all for sins that a person has done? We'll find out the answer to that question in tomorrow's Tanya.